It is going to require that security operations people, infrastructure people, platform engineers really need to be familiar with AI.
Peter Campbell, so excited to chat with you, Peter.
Hey Nick, thank you for having me, welcome me onto the Built for Trust podcast. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm super excited to have you. It's like I tell you, Peter. I say this, and I'm older now, and so I've met a lot of people. But you're one of my favorite people. I always love talking with you. The work that we got to do in the ONU Collaborative was stellar. And you always just bring a really great perspective to almost everything you do. And so I'm sure everyone is going to get to know you during this, and will probably feel the same way that I do. So anyway, I'm really excited to have you. I've been kind of thinking about this podcast during the day. So let's kind of dive into it. So I love to start these off by allowing people who are kind of our thought leaders, which you are one of them, to kind of share your journey a little bit. So, you've always been tracking threats, like, you worked on nuclear submarines, when you were in the Navy. You led the cloud security at Cigna, which is incredible. So maybe what lessons, that you learned from your Navy days, and how did that help shape, how you now view cybersecurity and security and defenses, in particular?
No, that's great, Nick, and thank you. Been very. It's been a lot of fun being part of ONUC, and I think of some of the work that we're going to talk to a little bit later in this podcast about the journey through ONUC and some of the work that we've done together and we still are doing. Excited to talk about that, but to really talk a little bit about sort of what has motivated me and kind of propelled me along into the career that I'm into, like some 30 years into it now, in cybersecurity. It was really formed when I was in the Navy on submarines, and I brought a diagram that kind of talks a little bit about that, because I've been thinking about this. What is it about what's kind of attracted me to cybersecurity, because it's actually been quite a lot of work for me to get into cybersecurity. And that's another thing we could talk about as well, as far as career paths and so on. It's, everyone kind of has a different career path. A lot of people that I meet in cybersecurity have a different careers. So let me share my presentation with you. And hopefully you can see that.
I can, yes.
So I thought this was and if you can see this, this is a really interesting diagram. But what this shows is that that a submarine is it can see perfectly well what's ahead of it, right? And it uses sonar to do that when a submarine is deployed at sea. And the interesting thing about this, and all submarines are the same, have the same phenomenon, where the onboard systems can see in front of them very clearly, right?
Mm-hmm.
But behind them, that's actually their blind spot. So the onboard systems, sonar, which I worked in sonar, can't see, cannot see behind the submarine. So what does that mean? Well, the threat. The threat could be hidden behind you, right? The threat it could actually be in your environment, and maybe you're not even aware of that.
Yeah. It's always what's behind you, right? It's like what a great model here. So it's like Soviet submarine chugging along, and then U.S. Marine or submarine, right behind it, a little
Yeah,
quietly, scoping it out.
that's a Los Angeles class, and they're essentially the hunter, right? Who is they're actually going after the adversary, right? So following the Soviet submarine. So And one of the things that we need to do, pretend we're, we don't know what's in our baffle area. So at times we need to maneuver and we need to think differently, right, to really be able to uncover that threat. So the way that a submarine does that when it's at sea, it does a maneuver, right? It does a what they
Mm.
call a baffle clearing maneuver. So it will turn anywhere from 60 to 120 degrees, while they're at sea, and then search their baffle area.
Ah,
So they'll point their sensors towards the baffle area by maneuvering the ship, and once the baffles are clear, they maneuver back and continue on the course that they're on.
okay.
So when
So I
you
have to
think
ask a
about,
stupid question. Yeah. So why doesn't the sonar work in arrears? Is it because of just all the vibration and all the disturbance, in the water that gives that blind spot?
yeah, exactly. So what I think you're exactly right, Nick. I mean, most of the ship's propulsion is creating enough noise in the environment. And again, it goes back to the noise that is in the environment is sometimes preventing us from hearing the threat,
Yeah.
right? Or seeking the threat. So, for example, within a organization, you could have uh, noise in your environment. It could be a merger and acquisition. It could be other business activity or business disruptions, right, that are causing us to not be able to see the threat.
Yeah.
On a submarine, you're exactly right. Now this is sort of a simplified view of that, and what navies have done. They've been doing this for about probably 40 years. Is that they've come up with ways to be able to see behind them.
Mm.
So what they do is deploy a towed sonar array behind them. But still, even that has limitations as well. But it helps see within your baffles. But I think that really talks to the cat and mouse games that have gone on out on the sea for many many years between submarines and their adversaries, and what we see happening within cybersecurity as far as threats in the environment. The threat is always adapting,
Yeah.
right? It's always changing and always trying to stay one or two or three steps ahead of the security teams. So
Mm.
I thought that would be an interesting way to kind of start today.
Yeah. Great framing. So I have to ask you one question before we leave. That's this topic. How was it staying on a submarine for like months on end?
Well, I tell you, you actually do learn quite a bit about yourself um, by spending. Now, think of this. I've spent, I tallied this up, about 580 days throughout the 6 years I was in the Navy. 580 days I was deployed.
Wow.
And you're on a deployment, we'd have about 130 people on board. So you had to be able to get along with 129 of your closest friends, right? And that was something I think has really helped me to this day, as far as being able to work with different people, different styles, and the other thing I think what really helps is when something breaks, right? You need to be able to figure out how to fix it. So a lot of ingenuity is required at times
Mm.
because we can only carry so many spare parts, so much food, etc. So we have to find ways to solve problems. So that was the other big takeaway for me. So getting
That's
along with
a
people and solving problems.
Yeah, that's and also just that's a long time. That's like not exactly 2 years, but that's a good amount of time that you spent like on a submarine. You must know these systems like inside and out. It's like yeah. All right, so all right, now I got to extrapolate that. All right, what do you think of space travel then? Because kind of similar, confined environment, long periods of time, you know, um, you have only a certain amount of space that you can bring resources with.
Exactly, exactly. So when you think about the folks that were most recently up in the space station, right? They were up there for an extended period of time,
Yeah.
and it's very different because there's not as many distractions. It's really an interesting situation. Because like when we were deployed at sea, we would get news updates and briefings, but it wasn't 24/7. And I'm
Yeah.
sure even in the U.S. space station, they have internet access. They probably have a lot of things, but they also have a lot of time to themselves as well. So
Uh,
that's pretty interesting. So I think that dimension of space travel, eventually sending people to Mars. I mean, I think that's certainly
hmm.
going to happen within
Yeah.
our lifetime.
Yeah. Excited about that. Okay. All right. Let's talk about security. You are a fellow, within the ONU community. A lot of work on CSNF. Do you want to start with the CSNF work, or do you want to dive into the hyperautomation around SOCs?
No, I think it would be great to start a bit, discuss CSNF and sort of the destination, CSNF and hyperautomation, the AI-driven SOC. Uh, is really part of that journey and part of the destination. So when I think of the work and the people that maybe may not be familiar with what the cloud security notification framework is,
Yeah.
but that was really our the working group's job role really was to determine how can we better address the amount of telemetry and data coming from multiple cloud platforms into the SOCs, the security operations centers. And what we learned and validated by working with other enterprise consumers is the millions of dollars that is spent not only on storing data that originates from the cloud, but storing the data, but also purchasing and spending dollars on software, right?
Yeah.
Security software to either store or actually make some intelligent decisions around that data within the SIM and
It's
within the
massive.
security operations centers.
Yeah. If I can maybe just give like one data point, like Intuit presented at one ONUC, and they said they capture about 20 petabytes a year, of telemetry data. That's I'm not sure, like, if that's a big number to you or not a big number to you, but like that was a pretty big number to me. I thought, like, wow, that's so you're thinking about storage of all that, data. If you're putting that into a Splunk, they were spending about 1 million a month on Splunk, and that was years ago. That was probably back in 2019, and it's only grown, now. So these they're big numbers around all this telemetry data. The storage of them is costly, and then if you're putting them into your own private data lake, and if that data lake is based upon whether it's Snowflake or Datadog or Splunk or what have you, then there's huge licensing cost there, and then there's other software tools around that you were just talking about, all this other software to try to make sense out of all that data.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think what we learned as well is that sort of that last mile of cybersecurity involves a lot of human toil. Remember,
Yeah.
I think we had John Willis as part of the original working group.
Hmm.
Kind of the one of the fathers of the DevOps movement, right?
Hmm.
And this toil really doesn't add a lot of value, and it really adds no value. So all we're doing is moving data, manipulating data, um, but what has to happen is we need to be able to take action on the data. And what's happened is so much data enters the SOC. You know, how much is actually being um, how many detections are actually happening? How effective are the detections? How much of this can be automated? So for all the data that lands in the Security Operations Center, a large organization, 70% of it typically isn't even acted upon. So when that
Wow.
happens,
Mm.
that really mutes the investments in security tooling that the organization is making. So if we're bringing all of this data, from cloud or multiple clouds into your SoC, and you've spent millions of dollars on security tooling, and you're still not able to look at, you're only looking at 30% of the data on average. This is for the average company.
Mm.
Really your investments are only, are 70% ineffective, really.
You got a big baffle
So,
there.
yeah, so this is where we're exactly, Nick. And, this is what we're really going after with CSNF was, is there a way that we can standardize the alerts and the events that are coming from multiple cloud providers? Because we know, we're operating in AWS, Azure, Oracle, GCP, OpenShift, and each of those platforms will has their own threat detection frameworks, and they'll basically send events, but they'll be in a different format, a different shape, and there's some uh, translation that has to occur before a detection can be created, and an automated response can be done for any type of event that comes in.
Yeah.
So that is a tremendous amount of labor and effort. And if we could standardize that, and I think I have a slide on that where we talked a little bit about it. Let me
Okay.
see if
Let's
I can
check it
open
out.
that up.
So while you're doing that, I'll kind of summarize. Like, so CSNF was to standardize on format and syntax of the definition of various different alerts and alarms and logs that were coming from the cloud provider's security systems. And so, because all of the cloud providers have different syntax, they would have an alert that might have some definition, but it's all coded differently. And so this was a way to canonicalize that. And that's really where we led it, is like to, all right, let's canonicalize. And then we actually took it a step forward in terms of start taking some action. So yeah, let's talk to this slide.
Yeah, exactly. And this is some of the work that we did, through the working group, and we had a number of big, large enterprises had participated in this. Cigna, FedEx, others. Intuit, I think, was part of it as well. And we were
To
also working with
Adobe.
multiple,
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
multiple cloud providers. As I know, we had IBM Cloud, we had Azure Cloud,
Yeah.
Oracle Cloud. Some of the
Google.
major players were part of this. But as we started to look at this, it's kind of the big pain points that we were just kind of talking about, right? I love this wall of worry phrase that you coined, Nick, around the high alert volume,
Oh, yeah. It's like, oh my
right?
God. It's like, I don't know what I don't know. It's all
Right.
worry. Yeah.
Exactly. And and I was looking for that slide, but I couldn't find it. But I mean, this talks
Um,
to it. Alert
yeah.
fatigue is another term that you often hear from
Mm,
security teams, right? We're just getting so many alerts. Which ones do we need to pay attention to?
yeah.
And as you go down through this list, I can think of different ways that AI can help us solve many of these problems.
Yeah.
Um, Around alert fatigue, having there were different severity levels that were not contextually aligned to what the customer's severity level would be. Because the CSP, the cloud service provider, does not really
Yeah.
have any awareness of a critical application that you're running, or if it's not a
Yeah.
critical app. Um, different formats that you spoke about, Nick. So all of these items here kind of add to this. These were all the concerns. Is the alert my responsibility? Is it on the someone, the cloud service provider's side of the shared responsibility model? Is if the resource is still private. I mean, present in cloud, we have the problem of ephemeral resources. A resource could have created an alert and it went away. What happened to it?
Yeah.
How do we go back and replay it? So yeah, and I think this was really the pain points that led up to the creation of the standardized information model. We talked about having and built an integration into Splunk, that allows teams to format and use Splunk to help standardize to the CSNF model. So that was,
Yeah.
you know, great amount of work that was done. You know, we've actually got a lot of really good feedback from the community on this, and I think this was really kind of the start of the journey. Um, and if you look at this next slide that I put up here, was, this was one of the earlier slides that we put together that kind of talked to this whole
Yeah.
idea of, bringing data into the environment, using a common information model, the Splunk SIM, and then mapping that over to CSNF, and then mapping that and enriching the alert and taking action on it. But I drew a big, I don't know if you can see this, a big purple circle around this whole area to say, hey, this an area where maybe an AI first SecOps solution could actually solve a lot of this toil, a lot of this pain that companies are going through.
Yeah.
And that's
Really.
what kind of leads us to the conversation around hyper automation. But I was
Yeah.
just wondering, Nick, if you had any comments on this view.
Yeah, I think so. What's really interesting is that, okay, we did the CSNF work. It's a GitHub, open source, project. And we were, the tools that we were using at the time was, basically just, writing code that would take these different formats and then transpose them into a different schema that was common. That's how we would have to deal with data. And now we have all the AI tools, and they're only embryonic, right now. And it's a totally fundamentally different way to solve this problem. And I think it's going to be a lot easier to solve it than kind of the old fashioned data manipulation and because you had to get, I think the data mapping was pretty straightforward, but you had to convince so many companies, to adopt, and like all the cloud providers, and they had their own schemas, and they didn't want to do anything that would change them. This also turned out to be, in a lot of their views, a competitive advantage and a lock-in for the consumers. So there was hesitancy from the cloud providers to adopt it. And you can imagine, like with companies like Splunk and Datadog as well, where they do their own canonical mapping, proprietary within their systems. So anyway, it's a straightforward problem to solve, and we provided not only a framework but actually a working model. But the politics is difficult. I think we have a different opportunity now with AI, right? Would you agree with all that?
All right. No, I definitely agree with your assessment, because at that time, and you're right, this was really, well, this was 2021, 2022, 2023, that time frame
Hmm.
where a lot of this work, companies that spent, literally millions of dollars making these investments in integrating at scale
Yeah,
their SecOps solutions, right? So they're very reluctant to go in and go in and make changes to that,
yeah,
or they would only work with the largest vendors or partners, right, to engineer a solution that would do this. What
yep.
we're finding today with AI, and we'll talk more about hyper automation, but if you look at this, what you see here within this box,
Hmm.
where it enters the security product. It could be any security product. This one happened to be Splunk because that's what we were testing at the time.
Yeah,
But you could see where there's an AI agent
yeah,
today that would determine if it was a notable event or not. We would have another AI agent that would be connected to CMDB that would determine the asset, the asset category, and is it a critical asset or not. We'd have another AI agent that would provide threat intelligence.
So Peter, I'm not sure if what you're seeing is what we're seeing. So there might
Okay,
be another slide. Let's take a look. Maybe stop and start again.
let me go back to this.
Okay.
Yeah, it may have timed out.
There we go. Okay. Yeah, we can
Go
see that
back to
now.
this here. So in this box here, I was talking about notable events, asset and identity, threat intelligence, risk analysis, and adaptive response. So these
Yeah.
functions are being replaced with AI agents, right?
Yeah.
So there'd be an AI agent that would determine if an event is notable using AI and ML,
Yeah.
right? It wouldn't replace humans, but I think this would augment the human activity that's going on in the SOC.
Hmm.
Another AI agent would be connected to CMDB. You could see this asset
Yeah.
agent. Another one would be connected to your threat intelligence that you're using, or possibly an MCP server. There'd be a risk agent and a response agent, right? So these are the things, kind of these high-level functions within the SOC could be and will be replaced with agents. And it's sort of starting to happen now, Nick, through what's called hyperautomation.
Okay.
So
So
hyperautomation is really,
what I love
uh,
about this so far, Peter, is that if the problem is still there, we worked on it. We came up with a solution, and now as we're seeing the market change and AI come in, and especially agentic AI, these components, like we were looking at these as particular kind of use cases on how to use CSNF, and now they're becoming agents. So it's really kind of fascinating. So, all right, so now into kind of a hyper automation of a SOC. So, how do you kind of take a SOC that has level one, two, and three, security engineers, a lot of data coming in at them. They're only able to see 30% of them because of just toil. All right, so how does that change?
right. So I think if I just go back to the prior slide, you'll see here, kind of the operation of the SOC that you're going to see in the next slide really is this, looking at notable events,
Hmm.
right? Doing the detection engineering, trying to contextualize or the asset itself to understand the criticality of the asset, who owns it, what's the risk profile, what's the threat profile, and then what's the appropriate level of response. All of this can be done through hyperautomation using let's say, a collaborative system of agents, I guess I'd call it. So
Hmm.
everything that you see on the prior slide here would be managed by kind of a master agent, right? That would talk to these other agents
Yeah.
and collaborate. They would collaborate and try to find, the best verdict or the best decision for
Yeah.
what to do with the event. So, this is pretty important because, as we talked about, not only the sort of the way that today's SOCs are really not able to, you know, have time to create detection rules around uh, every data, all of the data that comes in. But really, what we're trying to do as an industry is really CrowdStrike has kind of set the bar pretty high for this. It's called the 1-10-60 challenge. So
Hmm.
detection within 1 minute, classification within 10 minutes, and uh, containment within 60 minutes, right? So you're containing and eradicating the threat within 1 hour. So you've detected it within a minute, classified it within 10 minutes, and contained it within 60 minutes.
Hmm.
That's, today that takes days, right? Today
Yeah.
that takes many, many hours or days to do that. And I think with hyperautomation, it's going to allow us, to kind of meet that industry benchmark of 1-10-60. And this is actually what many of the vendors are, kind of their value propositions. CrowdStrike is one of the leaders in this space
Yeah.
with the work that they're doing with their AI-driven security operations and using their flavor of AI, which is Charlotte AI. But there are many other vendors in this space now uh, that are really coming up with interesting solutions to the problem, and they're all using hyperautomation. And you think about, we're just looking at security operations. Um, where there's actually a lot of work that's also being done with vulnerability management, vulnerability remediation. So the same kind of workflows are being in place with really a set of collaborative AI agents that are, basically taking the work of the tier one SOC analyst
Yeah.
and kind of the industry feels now that we're very close now where we can kind of almost eliminate and move the work that the tier one analyst is doing up to the tier three and allow AI to kind of manage the tier one work, which is where most of the toil, most of the boredom over time. I think where security engineers really don't want to be doing that type of work
Mm.
and put them on sort of higher value activities.
So
So
the
these are
only
some of the
thing,
things that I think that the hyper automated SOC is going to do for us.
so don't you think like, that the response time to mitigate has got to be quicker than an hour? It's like, I'm kind of thinking, like remember, like, and this was like back in what, 2018 when Merck and FedEx got hit with Petya,
Yep.
virus, and so like within 5 minutes they had like 60,000 machines infected. It's like so I'm kind of thinking like the defenses have got to be a lot faster. They've got to get faster than 60 minutes, unless I'm missing something. In how they're defining, that mitigation.
Well, I think, the biggest challenge with all of this really comes down to at what level will the business agree to have security basically, um, you know, sever the ties, right? And business availability is key, right?
Yeah.
Before any of this can be automated. So there needs to be agreements in place that it's okay to remove access. Now, it could be let's say it's a customer-facing system, and it's at your peak period of business activity. Let's say it's towards year end, and are we willing? Do we trust AI? Do we trust this enough to allow it to make those types of decisions? Reconfigure the network and block all traffic, for example, if we wanted to isolate this particular component.
I think that is
So
really the key thing. The whole point about trusting, um, and I think that's I think the part that's going to take the longest amount of time. Is it identifies a pattern, a signature, um, and then when do we kind of allow the automation of that, um, countermeasure, to be launched, is I think really kind of the question, for it. But I think that's a process, and it's a process every company is going to have to make, and and get comfortable, with it. But I think that's kind of like where we're going. But I think the bottom line is that hey, it's a lot better than a full day or days, going down to like an hour. So that's a good set of metrics, to be focused on right now.
yeah, I think it is. It's going to take some time for I think for organizations to be able to achieve that. I'd love to. I've been following this pretty closely, so I've I anticipate that we're going to see a lot of progress in this area, but I don't know if that 60-minute goal is like I said, that's a pretty high bar. It's going to take time for organizations to be able to meet that.
Hmm. Okay. So then, what does so I guess what I'm now thinking of, as you're talking, Peter, is that okay? You have a couple of engineers, you have a bunch of like very task specific agents, you have kind of an agent of agents that is orchestrating kind of the work within the SOC, and that's all to basically automate all of the processing of all those alerts, alarms, and then when there's a signature that comes in that needs attention, it kind of focuses attention, provides some context, and then gets kind of level two, level three engineers involved.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think what we're starting to see is some of these tools that are, taking both an inside out and an outside in perspective.
Hmm.
So, some of these tools or some of these startups that, I've been talking to some of them is that, they're doing what's called external attack surface monitoring. So they're looking for assets that maybe the organization may have unwillingly or unknowingly exposed, right, to the external attack surface. But they're also looking from within to understand the context and where that data is coming from and building a picture of, okay, here's what's visible from the outside. Here's what it looks like from the inside, basically starting at the source code repository and looking at the way that the assets are configured internally and being able to basically pinpoint, where there are vulnerabilities, where there's exposures, unwanted exposures, and be able to immediately take action on those.
Yeah.
And that again is, heavily leveraging AI to be able to do those types of analytics. So that's extremely valuable to organizations as well, right? So as the larger the organization is, typically the larger the external attack surface is, and that's really attack surface monitoring is super critical.
Yeah. So in this model that you have on your graphic, so that's using kind of the Splunk CIM or Common Information Management, right? And then these are the applications that rely upon on that data. But this can be, anything. It's like these agents can be directly ingesting. I'm assuming that we can probably have like a Google Cloud agent, an Oracle, cloud agent, an Azure cloud agent that is ingesting or looking at all that data that's coming in real time, and then flagging particular data. And so, like, I guess what I'm thinking of is that the agents themselves could be doing the kind of the CIM function at some point in time and speaking natively to one side, to the cloud provider, and then but speaking in a common format between the agents.
Yeah, no, that's, you're right. And doing that at machine speed, right? That's, kind of, not requiring, humans to go in and, create the mappings, update and maintain those relationships, right? That could all be done, using Agentic AI, and probably that in a combination of MCP servers
Yeah,
uh, and RAG. It's probably not, I don't think it's going to be that difficult of a challenge. But it is going to require that, security operations people, infrastructure people, platform engineers really need to be familiar with AI.
yeah,
So I think that's an area where there's still a lot of education and, learning is going to be required to be able to leverage this.
yeah. You need water. Yeah, well, it's like what Gene Sun said. It's like AI won't replace your job, but people with AI skills will. So it's like everyone really has got to get up to speed. Okay, so maybe timeline. Where are we today, and when do we think, or when do you kind of envision realistic, like hyper automated SOCs?
I think we're probably, I think it's, this, 2026, I think will be where we're going to see a lot of that. You're going to see, I think it's going to start, I think, with the MSSPs,
Hmm.
the managed services security providers,
Yeah,
because it only makes sense for them. They're operating at scale. And then I think that organizations will, be quickly following with that.
okay. So we're actually thinking like this starts in 2026. Now, clearly there are products out there in the marketplace today, and there are companies like there's even a company, I'm not sure, Insight Finder is a company. They're not like SOC related; they're more kind of network incident related. But that's a pretty wide, big system being used in a lot of financials, right now as well. So I think we can point to examples. Grokstream is another, good example. There, uh, what Cisco announced, at Cisco Lot, excuse me, the Agentic Ops. Also, the integration of Splunk with the cloud security or Cisco Security Cloud as
Hmm.
well. You have their Hypershield also. So there's all of this is it's what's interesting is that it's not just kind of the startup marketplace that is innovating at speed, which is what we normally would expect, but also all the large companies as well, like Cisco Live was like monster announcements going on there. The integration or M&A of HPE and Juniper. So while not big security players, kind of more clear around the networking space. Palo Alto Networks, Wiz, as well in Agentic. Snowflake, really big agentic push, from Snowflake, as well. So the tools are coming, from not only just startup companies, but also from all the major players in the industry. So I think the SOC is about really, and also the NOC is really getting ready for a very fundamental transition that we haven't seen in about 30 years. It's like the last big transition was the advent of data lakes and SIMs and SOARs, right? Those
Yeah,
were like
I
kind of the
think that,
major, right?
and I agree. And I think that's probably one of the last areas. Probably is the SOC, just because of the amount of investment, the amount of complexity uh, required to be able to make changes. Now, if you're already using, a Wiz, a Palo Alto, and your security operation is leveraging a lot of those tools already, you'll be able to begin to adopt it more quickly. But I think, sort of all of this is moving beyond the sim, right? And kind of, moving and doing things in a different, more effective way. So, based on all of the, what we've seen since COVID, right, with the amount of amount of cloud consumption and the way that that's grown, the amount of data, shows us that. But I think I do see areas where around security where a lot of AI is in place today is like, for example, AI-driven pen testing. So
Mm,
large organizations have regularly scheduled pen tests,
yeah.
annually, sometimes twice, three times a year, but they can't. There's not enough time necessarily to pen test every single application, right? So you may have 3 or 4 thousand applications. Well, which ones are the most important ones to pen test? And we have to
Mm,
figure out which ones we want to pen test on an annual basis. With like Pantera and other companies and startups that are now in the marketplace, they're able to come in and deploy their AI pen testing solutions that are, from what I understand, are working very well, and can do this really with very limited human intervention,
mm,
and can do it much more quickly, more effective, and actually find more vulnerabilities as well. So I think as these tools begin to roll out, one of my concerns actually, Nick, is that it begins to just add to an existing problem, right? So
mm,
companies have hundreds of thousands or millions of vulnerabilities that they're trying to address today, and there's while companies are making progress, is AI just going to find more and more vulnerabilities and just add more onto the pile, right? But
hmm.
there's two ways to look at it. Could AI actually help better prioritize the vulnerabilities that the business teams and the development teams are trying to fix,
Yeah.
right? So that's always the rub, is that so the security tools are finding more and more vulnerabilities all the time, and the development teams are saying, well, hey, this vulnerability, you've given me so much here, where do I start? And
Oh,
are truly all
mm,
of these vulnerabilities exploitable? Are they reachable, et cetera? So that's, I think, another area where AI is going to help,
yeah.
and those solutions are also kind of in the marketplace now.
Wow. Well, actually, Peter, this was like, great, discussion, and also great narrative on how we've kind of like started with submarines and moved into like hyper automation. So really, kind of AI is kind of the mitigates the baffle vulnerability is really, I think what you were saying, and also you have like a security sonar series. So, you want to tell everyone about that?
Yeah, so we're working with ONUG. We're rolling out, and the second episode is going to be airing later this month, where we've called it Security Sonar. What we're going to be doing is looking at some of the you know current threats and current solutions to sort of industry problems. Really focusing on cloud, focusing on AI. We've
Hmm.
got some great guest speakers lined up, really thought leaders in the industry that'll be able to share their knowledge, kind of their view of where they see you know all topics from AI driven security operations to deep fake detection to kind of the future of how we're securing cloud and security controls, startups all the way to CTOs, CIOs, et cetera. So we'll have different guests each month, and very excited about that. Excited about the opportunity to work with Onuk on that.
Yeah, awesome. That's great, and they're really, really good. I know I plugged into the first one, and looking forward to like the second one, as well. So, one thing that you mentioned deep fakes. Like when we had John Chambers at the networking summit in Dallas, John mentioned deep fakes, and he really amplified them. As like this is really kind of serious, and he connected them to contact centers and call centers, and so that's a big issue, and so it'll be interesting to see the industry starting to offer solutions, and it's almost like the solutions have got to be in the network almost before kind of the deep fake agent gets to a contact center agent. Like if you can mitigate it there before it's like actually interacting with a contact center agent, I think that's really where you want to nip it in the bud. So you
Yeah,
guys
we
gonna be
want to
talking
try
about
to.
that?
Yeah, exactly. No, we wanted to try to detect that threat as far from the contact center as possible. But it brings a lot of challenges around. Think about good bots versus bad bots. I mean, I think in the future you're going to be you may have a healthcare bot that's acting on your behalf that may be putting in a request for a pharmacy prescription refill, right?
Hmm.
Through your phone. That could be a good bot. But there's also bad bots that are trying to act on the behalf of the adversary, right? So that's kind of the area in the baffles where, how are we as an industry going to be able to put the right type of detections in place? And
Hmm.
how do we determine a good versus bad?
Yeah.
Right?
Hmm.
So that's very interesting. So all of us in our daily lives are we using AI today? We're going to be using it for more and more things, uh, such as your healthcare, visiting the doctor, getting your vehicle repaired, home repairs, etc. Maybe responding to your home alarm system that just got
Yeah.
activated. I just got a note here, a message here a minute ago, right? So,
Wow.
having bots that are managing all of this versus, bad bots. So I think that's a big industry challenge. And yeah, we've got some interesting thought leaders on that problem. I think we may even have potentially that may be a topic this fall at ONUG in New York. It would be an
Yeah.
interesting topic for your panel discussion.
It'd be a great demo, that's for sure.
Hmm.
Here's the problem, and I think it's only those companies that have contact centers are really aware of this and how big this problem actually is. But well, Peter, this was super great. Thank you so much, for taking the time, giving us like some background on submarines and where their vulnerabilities are, and how that kind of led to CSNF and the hyperautomation, of a SoC. Super great. Thanks, Peter.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Nick. I enjoyed the opportunity, and hopefully the audience found it interesting. So it's great to talk about this today. Thank you.
Great. Thanks. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for plugging in.